Good afternoon. We're still reading the synopsis of Swami Niranjanananda's life in the book God Lived with Them by Swami Chetanananda. If you're following along, it's page 249. And Niranjanananda was one of the disciples that was designated an Ishvara Koti, who came down, an ever-free soul. He was one of the ones. When Ramakrishna met him, said he had particular purity and truthfulness. This section that we're reading now is called In the Service of the Master. He had quit his job and was going to come to the Master all the time now. In September 1885, Sri Ramakrishna moved to Shampur, Calcutta, for his cancer treatment. Niranjan left home and became the Master's gatekeeper, as he was strong and heroic by nature. Remember the story of him threatening to tip the boat over when people were speaking against the Master as he was going to Dakshineshwar. There's an interesting story of how Niranjan was fooled by an actress. In 1884, when Sri Ramakrishna went to see Girish Ghosh's drama, Chaitanya Leela, he had been extremely pleased with Binodini, the actress who had played the part of Chaitanya, and had blessed her. She, in turn, had become very devoted to the Master, but could not find another opportunity to meet him. Now, hearing of his illness, she longed to see him again, but the Master's disciples were very strict about visitors. They feared that if Sri Ramakrishna talked too much, or if he were touched by impure people, his disease would be aggravated. Most of the actresses at this time were prostitutes. In order to see the Master, Binodini sought help from Kalipada, whom she knew through Girish. One evening, acting on his advice, she dressed herself as a European gentleman and went with Kalipada to the Shampur house. Introducing her to Niranjan as a friend of his, Kalipada took her to the Master, who was alone in his room at that time. Sri Ramakrishna laughed when Kalipada told him who this European gentleman really was. After praising Binodini's faith, devotion, and courage, the Master gave her some spiritual instruction and allowed her to touch his feet with her forehead. When Binodini and Kalipada had left, Sri Ramakrishna told the disciples about the trick that had been played on them. The Master enjoyed it so much that the disciples could not be angry. Now, this was a very good actress in Calcutta at the time. Following his doctor's advice, Ramakrishna moved from the smoggy environment of Calcutta to a garden house at Kasipur on the 11th of December, 1885. Kasipur was then a suburb of Calcutta. Now it's right inside the city and not very far from the Ganga. The Master was quite happy despite his terminal cancer. On the morning of 23 December, Ramakrishna gave unrestrained expression of his love for the devotees. He said to Niranjan, "You are my father. I shall sit on your lap." Touching another devotee's chest, he said, "May your inner spirit be awakened." By living with the Master, the devotee's own love and devotion also grew by leaps and bounds. Now, this was primarily the young disciples of the Master, because on the 1st of January was the Kalpatara day when Ramakrishna blessed all of his householder disciples and everyone who came. But this, the 23rd of December, he seemed to be blessing his close inner disciples. Once Niranjan went back home for a visit. When he returned, the Master said, "Please tell me how you feel." Niranjan replied, "Formerly I loved you, no doubt, but now it is impossible for me to live without you. Then the master explained to M, this illness is showing who belongs to the inner circle and who to the outer. Those who are living here, renouncing the world, belong to the inner circle, and those who pay occasional visits and ask, "How are you, sir?" belong to the outer circle. Now, personally, I think either circle would be liberating, but of course nicer in the inner circle. The young disciples took turns around the clock serving the master. Moreover, they were practicing spiritual discipline according to his instruction. They renounced hearth and home and surrendered themselves to Sri Ramakrishna. The following incident reveals how the master protected his disciples. One evening, Niranjan and a few other disciples decided to get juice from a date palm tree near the southern boundary of the garden. The master knew nothing about this. When it was dark, Niranjan and the others walked in the direction of the tree. In the meantime, Holy Mother saw the master running down the steps and through the door. She wondered, how is it possible? How can one who needs help, even to change his position in bed, run like an arrow? She could not believe her eyes, so she went to the master's room to see if he was there. Ramakrishna was not in his room. In great consternation, she looked all around, but she could not find him. At last, Holy Mother returned to her room extremely confused and with much apprehension. After a while, Holy Mother saw the master running swiftly back to his room. She then went to him and asked about what she had seen. He replied, "Oh, you noticed that?" I think anyone would, quite frankly. You see, the boys who have come here are all young. They were proceeding merrily to drink the juice of a date palm in the garden. I saw a black cobra there. It is so ferocious, and it might have bitten them all. The boys did not know this, so I went there by a different route to drive it away. I told the snake, "Don't enter here again." The master asked her not to divulge this account to others. There's always been, this great debate of miracles. Are they important or not? Our order doesn't feel that they are that important, but they did happen. After he had been at Kasipur 3 or 4 months, Ramakrishna's body became so emaciated that it was hard to recognize him. But his devotees still hoped that he would free himself from the cancer. During this time, the master told Niranjan, "Look, I am now in such a state that whoever sees me in this condition will attain liberation in this life by the grace of Divine Mother. But know for certain that it will shorten my life." Upon hearing this from the master, Niranjan became more vigilant about his guard duty. He sat at the gate day and night with a turban on his head and a stick in his hand to keep outsiders from visiting the master. Niranjan sometimes had to hurt people, but he accepted this as an unpleasant duty necessary to protect the master's life. A mentally ill woman used to accompany Vijay Goswami to the Kali temple at Dakshineshwar and sing to Sri Ramakrishna. The master was fond of her singing, but was careful about her as she cherished towards him Madhura Bhava, the attitude of a wife towards her husband. This is a kind of spiritual relationship that some Vaishnava aspirants adopt towards Krishna. Once this woman came to Kasipur at noon and wanted to visit the master. Niranjan stopped her at the entrance. She then became hysterical. Hearing this, the master asked Shashi to escort her to him and blessed her. She then began to make more frequent visits. Niranjan adopted an unbending attitude and prevented her from visiting the master. Most of the young disciples were very apprehensive because of her unpredictable and seemingly violent behavior. However, when the woman was finally discouraged, she paid no further visits. Rockall expressed his sympathy for the woman. He said, "We all feel sorry for her. She causes so much annoyance, and for that she suffers too." Immediately, Niranjan remarked, "You feel that way because you have a wife at home." Rockall replied sharply, "Such bragging, how dare you utter such words before him, Sri Ramakrishna?" The master remained silent. He appreciated Rockall's love and compassion for his suffering soul, as well as Niranjan's faithful service to the Guru. So no sides were taken. Both were right. Another day, Ramchandra wanted to visit the master, but Niranjan stopped him at the gate. Ram was hurt by this because he was one of the master's prominent lay devotees. He then said to Latu, "Please offer these sweets and flowers to the master and bring a little prasad for me." Latu was very touched and said to Niranjan, "Brother, Ram Babu is our very own. Why are you putting such restrictions on him?" Still, Niranjan was inexorable. Then Latu said very brutally, rather bluntly, "At Shampakor, you allowed the actress Binodini to visit the master, and now you're stopping Ram Babu, who is such a great devotee?" This pricked Niranjan's conscience, so he let Ram go see Ramakrishna. Look, never see faults in others, rather see their good qualities. Latu was embarrassed. He came down and apologized to Niranjan, saying, "Brother, please don't mind my caustic remark. I'm an illiterate person." This shows how the master taught his disciples to develop close interpersonal relationships. When we first entered the convent, one of the main rules is settle all differences before you go to bed, because you will see the person the next morning at the breakfast table. Make sure you have everything settled in right order, which is still part of the teachings, I think. Isn't it? Yeah, I think so. Once, Atul Ghosh, Girish's brother, came to visit the master and was stopped by Niranjan. Atul was very hurt. Piqued, he took a vow that he would not visit Ramakrishna again unless someone personally came to his house and took him there. One day the master asked Niranjan to go to Atul's house and bring him to check his health. Atul, though not a doctor, knew how to check a pulse and evaluate the condition of a disease. Immediately, Niranjan rushed to Atul and brought him to the master. Even while he was sick, the master was training his devotees, sometimes humbling one and sometimes increasing longing in another. During the winter, Ramakrishna would bathe with hot water. This was a big deal in India because you had to heat the water over a fire, and most everyone used a little cup with cold water, and it was very chilly. One day, Niranjan used a lot of firewood to heat a great, large vessel of water. That waste displeased the master, but Niranjan was stubborn. He carried the whole vessel of water to the master and said, "Sir, I don't have enough sense to know how much water you need. Since I have brought it, you will have to use it." The master was pleased by Niranjan's simple and fearless behavior. Notice he didn't argue with him, though. He just said what he did. It is hard for a lover to watch the suffering of his beloved. The real lover wishes he could relieve his beloved's suffering. While serving the master, Niranjan often worried about him. The master read his mind and one day asked him, "Niranjan, if I were cured of this disease, what would you do?" With great excitement, Niranjan replied, "Master, I would uproot that date palm tree from the garden." Knowing his heroic nature and his overwhelming love and devotion, the master remarked, "Yes, you could do that." The disciple took care of the master's body, and he in turn took care of their spiritual life. He silently and naturally gave shape to this group of ideal characters. From his birth, Niranjan had been endowed with divine qualities: simplicity, purity, fearlessness, steadiness, truthfulness, and renunciation. When the elder Gopal brought 12 pieces of ochre cloth and 12 rosaries, the master gave one of them to Niranjan and distributed the rest to other disciples. Thus, Ramakrishna sowed the seeds of his forthcoming monastic order. This was quite debated whether in India at that time, sannyasins were supposed to be wandering. They didn't live in one place together. They wandered. And this was quite an innovation when they formed an institution where they shared living and started social service. Holy Mother backed up this, that Ramakrishna had, in fact, sowed all the seeds for the monastic order. When Sri Ramakrishna passed away on 16 August 1886, the disciples gathered his relics from the Kasipur cremation ground and put them into an urn. They brought the urn to the garden house and decided to continue their service. But they had no money. So Ramchandra Datta suggested installing the master's relics at Kankargachi Yogadayan, his retreat house. Niranjan vehemently protested against this. He, Shashi, and some others secretly transferred the major portion of the master's relics into a separate urn, which they secretly kept at the house of Balaram Basu, a disciple of Sri Ramakrishna. In the beginning, Narendra had yielded to Rambabu's suggestion, but learning how his brother disciples felt, he supported their decision. Later, he installed the second urn at Bellarmont. This Vivekananda absolutely ruled all the brothers, but you can see he had concern and accepted their consensus and their opinions also and went along with them. It was a cooperative effort on everyone's part. No one was the dictator, though it sometimes probably sounded like it to them. Kind of, but this was a major thing. Okay, the next section we'll start just a little today is pilgrimage and austerity. In December 1886, now Ramakrishna's gone, Niranjan, Narendra, and several other brother disciples went to Anandpur, the birthplace of Baburam, Premananda. There they took the vows of renunciation in front of a sacred fire, not knowing that it was Christmas Eve. Sri Ramakrishna had created the hunger for God in their minds, and they began to spend their days in meditation and austerities. One day, Sarda went to bathe in a pond. All of a sudden, he slipped from a step and fell into deep water. He did not know how to swim. Immediately, Niranjan jumped in and rescued him, ignoring any threat to his own life. In the early part of 1887, Niranjan joined the Bharanagore Monastery and took the final vows of sannyas with his brother disciples. Vivekananda gave him the name Swami Niranjanananda. He continued his spiritual disciplines and austerities in the monastery. He also helped perform the worship service and did most of the laborious work. One day he was carrying some sweets from the market for the master's offering. A poor woman, holding her little boy in her arms, was walking in the same direction. Seeing the package of sweets in Niranjanananda's hand, the boy cried out, "Mother, I want to eat sweets." The more she tried to control her son, the more he cried. Niranjanananda gracefully went to the young boy and, placing the packet before him, said, "Please eat these sweets." The poor mother protested, "Father, no, you are carrying these sweets for the Lord. It would be inauspicious if my son were to eat them." Niranjanananda replied, "No, mother, it will be all right. His eating would be the same as the Lord's eating." Handing the packet to the boy, Niranjanananda returned to the market to buy fresh sweets for the master. This also sets the whole thing of our service of man, service of God in man, which is part of the order's prime purpose, realizing God's ourself and serving God and man. After taking the vows of sannyas, Niranjanananda went to Puri on a pilgrimage and returned to the Puranagore monastery on 8 April 1887. The monastery was in very poor condition. Because the disciples could not afford anything better, they were renting a dilapidated house for 10 rupees a month. They did not have a suitable altar in the master's shrine or accessories for worship. Niranjanananda had heard about an aged but expert carpenter in Calcutta and had him make a beautiful altar for the master. With the help of the devotees, Niranjanananda gradually collected a bed for the master, utensils, and a Japanese gong for vespers. Niranjanananda planted a bell tree on the spot where the master's body had been cremated, on the bank of the Ganga, and made a marble altar around the tree. He planned to set inscribed marble slabs in various locations connected with Sri Ramakrishna in the Dakshineshwar temple garden, but this plan never materialized. Sometimes he would go to Dakshineshwar with Swami Niranjanananda and meditate in the Panchavati or in the master's room. Okay. Most people in this world live for themselves, but those who live for others really live in the highest sense. There's great joy in sharing and serving others. Such joy eradicates selfishness and makes a person large-hearted. Whenever there was any problem or illness among the brother disciples or Holy Mother, Niranjanananda would assume responsibility. Niranjanananda nursed Yogananda when he was suffering from smallpox in Allahabad, served Latu when he had pneumonia, and helped both Balaram and Ram up to the time of their deaths. When Girish was passing through a long period of depression, Niranjanananda took him to Holy Mother, who lifted his spirits. In 1888, when Holy Mother was living alone at Kamarpukur, Harish, a devotee of the Master who was mentally ill, went there and began to disrupt her peace. Holy Mother subsequently complained to the monks at Puranagore, and both Niranjanananda and Sardananda rushed to Kamarpukur. Both of these are big men. Sardananda was a big man, too. Niranjanananda, and as soon as Niranjanananda arrived, Harish became so frightened that he hurried off to Vrindavan. Later, he recovered from his mental illness. And we'll just read this one. After Sri Ramakrishna's passing, his disciples always took special care of Holy Mother. And on the other hand, she looked after their welfare and inspired them. Many years later, referring to the hardships of the disciples, Holy Mother recalled, "What an austere life they lived at Puranagore Monastery. Niranjan and others often starved themselves. They spent all their time in japa and meditation. One day they resolved among themselves, well, we have renounced everything in the name of Sri Ramakrishna. Let us see if he will supply us with food if we simply depend on him. Neither will we tell anyone about our wants, nor will we go out for alms. So saying, they covered themselves with their chaddars, their shawls, and sat down for meditation. The whole day passed. It was late at night. They heard someone knocking on the door. Naran left the seat and asked one of his brother monks, please open the door and see who is there. First, check and see if he has anything in his hand. What a miracle. When the door was opened, they found a man had come from Lala Babu's Krishna temple near the Ganga with various delicacies in his hand. They were overjoyed and became convinced of the protecting hand of Sri Ramakrishna. They then offered the food to the master and partook of the prasad. Such things happen many a time. Denouncing spiritual disciplines and asceticism, worldly people believe that happiness can be derived from worldly possessions and sensual enjoyment. Spiritual people, however, find that happiness and peace come from within by controlling their worldly desires. Enjoyment cannot satiate the desire for enjoyment. It only increases desire, as melted butter intensifies a flame instead of extinguishing it. And we'll stop there for today. We're still going to be reading about Niranjanananda next week. And we have some announcements. Was there any questions or discussion? I'll ask quickly. Okay. Announcements. Saturday, we will not have the reading of the gospel. We are going to have Swami Bodhisarananda, the Assistant General Secretary from Bellarmont, visiting. And he will be giving a talk, The Divine Touch of Sri Ramakrishna, at 5. Now, we'll have that talk at 5, and as usual, when we have a visiting Swami, we'll then go into Arati and have a potluck down at the convent. Everyone's invited to the potluck. Please come if you can. In person. Those of you that can't come in person, I guess you will see him online. Then Sunday, Swami Vedarupananda will be giving the talk, and it's Steps to Realization. So, kind of goes along with Vajraprana's book, which came out this year, Vedanta, The Next Steps, which is excellent. But steps to realization, we all need to know them, okay? And next week, Wednesday, we'll still be on Swami Niranjanananda. Okay, so no questions, no comments, no, yes?
Did Swami Chetanananda really cut the comment that Niranjanananda made about that crazy lady like that? Because he said you're like that because you have a wife at home, and then he left it there.
He said it to Rakal.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think it was probably said.
No, it was said, but there's more in other.
Oh, well, he cut it.
Yeah, okay.
He cut it.
That's what you objected to the more.
Yeah, he cut it. That was how it appears in this book. So, okay, I guess we'll. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Hari Om Tat Sat, Sri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu. I hope you all stay cool. It's not cool here right now. It's one of our hot days. And try and hear Swami Bodhisarananda's talks if you can. Okay. We'll see you. Good to see all of you on screen.